This is Federalist 23, Part 4. We have already talked about some of these authors. I have mentioned that it is good for you to read their books, but I understand that you're not going to be at first able to read all the books because of time, money, or language skills. But I encourage you from time to time to watch some of their videos that are available on YouTube, on C-SPAN, and other places, on different websites. And as you go on, you will gradually be able to understand the early years of America better. Don't be disappointed if you maybe don't understand part of their talk because you're not familiar with that part of history. But give it time, it'll gradually accumulate and you will better understand their talks and the subject they will be talking about. All right, I will continue reading, starting with the beginning of this paragraph. Who's so likely to make suitable provisions for the public defense as that body to which the guardianship of the public safety is confided, which as the center of information will best understand the extent and urgency of the dangers that threaten, as the representative of the whole is capitalized, will feel the dangers, will feel itself most deeply interested in the preservation of every part, which, from the responsibility implied in the duty assigned to it, will be most sensibly impressed with the necessity of proper exertions, and which, by the extension of its authority throughout the states, can alone establish uniformity and concert in the plans and measures by which the common safety is to be secured. Is there not a manifest inconsistency in devolving upon the federal government the care of the general defense and leaving in the state governments the effective powers by which it is to be provided for? Is not a want of cooperation the infallible consequence of such a system? And will not weakness, disorder, and undue distribution of the burdens and calamities of war, an unnecessary and intolerable increase of expense, be its natural and inevitable concomitants? Have we not had unequivocal experience of its effects in the course of the revolution which we have just achieved? Notice he again goes back and talks about all our experience this past few years. We see what a mess some of the state governments have created. Well, how bad some of these constitutions and some of these states are. We see how states cannot answer to our requests. When we make a requisition, whether it's money or for soldiers or anything else, they always fall short. So again, he keeps on going back to experience and he says, what have we learned from this past 11 years? From 1776 to 1787. Also from what the Congress has done from 1784 to 1787 under the before and after the Articles of Confederation. So he says this constantly we have to go back to our experience and learn that what we have now is not complete, is defective, and we have to adopt this new constitution. Every view we may take of the subject as candid inquirers after truth will serve to convince us that it is both unwise and dangerous to deny the federal government an unconfined authority in respect to all those objects which are entrusted to its management. It will indeed deserve the most vigilant and careful attention of the people to see that it be modeled in such a manner as to admit of its being safely vested with the requisite powers. If any plan which has been, or may be, offered to our consideration should not, upon a dispassionate inspection, be found to answer this description, it ought to be rejected. A government, the constitution of which renders it unfit to be trusted with all the powers which a free people ought to delegate to any government, would be an unsafe and improper depository of the national interests. So he says, under the old Constitution, the government has not been given enough power, enough energy to do its job. He says a government which doesn't have enough authority to get the job done, you cannot call it a government. It's a joke. Wherever these can with propriety be confided, the coincident powers may safely accompany them. This is the true result of all just reasoning upon the subject, and the adversaries of the plan promulgated by the convention would have given a better impression of their candor if they had confined themselves to showing that the internal structure of the proposed government was such as to render it unworthy of the confidence of the people. They ought not to have wandered into inflammatory declamations and unmeaning cavils about the extent of the powers. The powers are not too extensive for the objects of federal administration, or in other words, for the management of our national interests, nor can any satisfactory argument be framed to show that they are chargeable with such an excess. He says all these people who are criticizing us, criticizing this new Constitution, and they say it goes too far, they're totally wrong. It doesn't go too far. All it does is give enough authority to the federal government to get its job done. If it be true, as has been insinuated by some of the writers on the other side, that the difficulty arises from the nature of the thing, and that the extent of the country will not permit us to form a government in which such ample powers can safely be reposed, it would prove that we ought to contract our views and resort to the expedient of separate confederacies, which will move within more practicable spheres. For the absurdity must continually stare us in the face of confiding to a government the direction of the most essential national interests, without daring to trust to it the authorities which are indispensable to their proper and efficient management. Let us not attempt to reconcile contradictions, but firmly embrace a rational alternative. So all this criticism is not right. They are not right. They don't talk about the fact that the national government needs to have enough power to do its job. Because we are going to be governing a large area. Because of that, we need this authority to do our job. Because the people who are criticizing us either want 13 countries made out of these 13 states, or they want 3 or 4 confederacies. And that's why all this criticism is being laid upon this new Constitution. They are not imaginative and virtuous people. They want to see us divided so that maybe they can hang on to their money, the power they have in their states, their position that they have. They're ambitious people, but they are very short-sighted. They don't think about the dangers that are ahead for us if we do not unite.